From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
The White House scrambles to explain why it didn't know the U.S. Defense Secretary was in the hospital as Hunter Biden crashes a House hearing about whether he should be held in contempt of Congress for defying a subpoena. Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We are joined today by my colleagues, columnists Bill McGurn and Kim Strassel. Call it the case of the missing defense secretary for days, apparently last week. As the public is now being told, Lloyd Austin was in the hospital at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. No one informed the White House or the President of the United States. According to the information that's now being posted by the Pentagon, this is from Monday, Austin had an elective medical procedure on December 22nd, and that he was admitted to intensive care with a complication on January 1st, which was last Monday. Here is White House spokesman John Kirby with a bit more news and explaining what the president was told and when.
He was not informed until last Friday that Secretary Austin was in the hospital. He was not informed until this morning that the root cause of that hospitalization was prostate cancer.
Is that because the White House knew and didn't inform the president, or because Secretary Austin chose not to share that with the president?
Nobody at the White House knew that Secretary Austin had prostate cancer until this morning, and the president was informed immediately after.
Obviously, we and Americans of all political stripes wish Austin good health and a speedy recovery. The last I had seen, he was back to work, but still at Walter Reed. What a breakdown this has been in communication and inside the administration in Washington.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the secretary. I think with his career and everything, this was an embarrassment for him. We don't know why he didn't disclose. I suspect he didn't want the White House and people to know he was ill. I don't believe our security was impacted for two reasons. One, the obvious is the military knows who's next in chain of command, and they go right after. So I don't think there's ever any questions about who's in charge when they can't reach someone or someone's incapacitated. But the second one, which is more troubling, the fact that no one at the White House noticed makes me wonder how important the Secretary of Defense was to Joe Biden's plan. You would think he'd be talking to him more or less every day about things going on in the Middle East and China and Russia. So you wonder how much the administration really valued Secretary's advice.
I take the point that Bill is making about the chain of command and no question about who is in charge at the Pentagon. And there's some information, again, that the Pentagon has put out about that apparently on January 2nd. It says certain authorities were transferred to Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks due to the secretary's condition and on the basis of medical advice. But then there's also some reporting that Hicks herself, as the Deputy Defense Secretary who is being empowered, did not know that Lloyd Austin was in the hospital. And then the Defense Department is also saying part of the delay was that Austin's chief of staff had the flu. So that's why it took until January 4th for anyone to inform the White House National Security Advisor. But Kim, I guess I'm a little bit less sanguine because while I have full confidence in the Deputy Defense Secretary, Kathleen Hicks, in terms of running the chain of command, knowing what is going on, she was chosen for that job as an advisor and a sister to Lloyd Austin, whereas Lloyd Austin was chosen and vetted and confirmed as an advisor to the President of the United States. And it is not hard to imagine a scenario could have occurred, an attack on U.S. forces in the Middle East in these couple of days. And somebody at the White House could have said, we need Lloyd Austin on the phone to give his candid advice to the president on what this means and how the U.S. should respond to that. And apparently they would have said, we can't find Lloyd Austin.
Well, that's right. And it's really quite remarkable. Obviously, the White House Chief of Staff, Jeffrey Zients, has now asked for a review of procedures in all cabinet departments. The Pentagon has ordered an internal review to find out precisely what happened here and who knew what and when. Apparently, a few aides were aware that he'd gone into the hospital. It's not clear exactly who those were. The more important point is that the people who really needed to know, meaning the deputy of the Pentagon and also the White House and the White House Chief of Staff, they were not informed. And when you think about this, it's pretty crazy. This person, Lloyd Austin, he is the second to the president in the military chain of command. He's part of the nuclear chain of command. I agree with Bill. I don't necessarily know that we were at risk of a terrible security situation, but I would note that while Lloyd Austin was in the hospital last week, we did engage in a retaliatory attack on a militia leader in Baghdad. So there were military operations that were going on. Those could have gone wrong. I think the bigger thing is that we simply have rules and protocols in place that specifically says that, that if you are basically going to be incapable of performing your duties, and I don't think that anybody would argue that if you were under general anesthesia, which we've now found out was part of this procedure that Lloyd Austin had done, that if you are going to be incapacitated in such a way, you need to hand off your powers to someone else to be in control at that time. None of that appears to have happened. And that's before you get to this question of who was informed and when. There did not appear to be the proper delegation of authority. And then in addition to that, not the proper notification of the White House and also Congress.
Bill, there are calls for Lloyd Austin to resign. President Biden has preemptively said that he would refuse any offer to resign. I guess I'm skeptical that that would be a necessary step based on the information that we have seen so far about how this went down. I don't know about you, Bill.
Yeah, I have a slightly different take. As someone that served in the White House, you're always aware that you serve the president and his interests come first. And Lloyd Austin, though I no doubt know he did not intend this, made the White House look very bad. Looks like no one's in charge. Where's the defense secretary? I think that's a bad look for Joe Biden, given also his age and other questions about his health. So I think the honorable thing would have been to offer to resign, because if a staff member can do this to the president, anyone can. So I think the honorable thing to do, I'm a believer in honorable resignations, would be to offer his resignation. You're basically saying it'd be better for the administration and the White House that I'm gone. Otherwise, keeping him on, I think, sends a bad signal.
Hang tight. We'll be right back with more on this in a moment. Welcome back. Kim, what do you make of this resignation question? I guess I would separate in my mind between a resignation that seems like it is required on the merits or a breakdown of operations, and a resignation that, as Bill sort of suggests, it's more of a political choice that you've become more of a distraction than your services are worth at that point.
Yeah, let me say this about Lloyd Austin. He has come out, taken full responsibility for this, apologized, said that he and his department will do better to be clear about transparency. I also understand that this was done in the name of medical privacy. Now, I don't necessarily agree that that was a good reason for doing that. Obviously, not at all. And in fact, everything went wrong here. It should not have played this way. But there's a certain amount of, I think, understanding some Americans would have for the reasons behind this. Now, of course, this is phenomenally exploded in his face. His goal to protect his privacy has now become this crisis and blown open to the whole world all of the information and details about his medical condition. I also think it's not helpful that in these days and age that people feel as though they can't talk about this stuff, and that that might dissuade other people from doing so too. But people get it. And the question is, with that apology in hand, can he minimize the fallout from this? Can he move on, go past that distraction, as you said? The balance against this is we need quality leadership at the Pentagon and stability as well there too. It could take quite some time to get replacement. And, this is Joe Biden. For those who don't like Lloyd Austin as a Pentagon head, it's certainly not clear you'd get someone that was different in any major way from him with Biden doing the nomination. So all of that has to be balanced against the desire to somehow punish a person for this break in protocol and the problems. I'd like to hope that if he's not going to resign, there could be an actual learning experience from this, that everybody take a good hard look at those transparency and notification procedures in such a way that we help safeguard that something like this does not happen again.
Bill, what do you make of these questions about privacy? Because I think that there's a distinction between privacy toward the public and privacy toward the White House. And I get that people who are going into these sorts of high-level jobs have a level of disclosure that is higher than people in the general public. On the other hand, maybe the Secretary of Defense is different from some of these other cabinet posts. This would probably not be a big news story if we were talking about the Secretary of the Interior or someone in that kind of a post. And maybe there's a distinction also between privacy toward the public and privacy toward the president that you're serving. Because as Kim suggests, if Austin had been forthcoming with the White House, that he had to step back for a few days, he was having a complication, an infection, he was in the hospital, then this would not have blown up in such a way that now everyone knows the diagnosis that he maybe was not eager to share with the world.
When you go to work for an administration at a very high level, you give up all sorts of privacy. I can tell you, especially from your financial point of view, the forms you have to put out, that's part of the job. And most of it is, again, to protect the president. He wants to know what he's getting so there are no surprises on the front page of the Washington Post one day. So I think while it's surely legitimate to be concerned, not want your medical records out there for everyone to see and comment on, as Kim said, if they had told the White House and then this broke, oh, gee, Lloyd Austin was in the hospital, then the White House spokesman could say the president was fully informed, the chain of command was respected, he's operated. We wish the secretary well. It wouldn't have been a story. It would have been over. So the problem is when you don't disclose this stuff, it looks like you're hiding something. So as Kim points out, the irony is Lloyd Austin has made the story even bigger. It just beggars belief that a general at that level would think he can hide something like this from the president he serves.